Hi and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. We thank you so much for joining us for our videos. We really appreciate our community and how helpful everyone is to everyone else. It's just such a delight to work with people who are so willing to share what they know. Today we are going to do something that I think is fun and easy, but it is only easy if you know a few little tricks about the procedure. You know, we have done a lot of dry soup mixes lately, and as I've been thinking about it, I thought, okay, so what do we want to serve if we are in a grid down situation for an extended period of time and we're making these soups? What can we serve with those soups? Well, we can serve flatbreads, naan or pita bread, or just a regular slice of our regular bread. And then the other day I happened across a recipe for popovers, and I thought, oh, of course, popovers would be so fun, and they are really quite easy. Popovers are really a mixture of flour and eggs and milk, and that's pretty much it. A little bit of oil, a little bit of salt, but it is the procedure that you go through in order to get them to do what they need to do. Now, I have made a dry mix two different ways. Here is a dry mix and I've developed this dry mix. I looked at a lot of popover recipes, and from all the ones I looked at, I was able to sort of put together a dry mix that would work using our food storage foods. So we have egg powder in here and we have powdered milk in here. And so I put one in a little bag that I just vacuum sealed, and it's hard as a rock. And I could write popovers, well, I'd write it on this side, which is not the crinkly side, popovers, and do it that way. Or it fits in a quart jar. If you have 24-ounce jars, this would be a perfect fit for 24-ounce jars. It does not fit in a pint jar. So the first thing that we're going to do is go through the method for mixing them and getting everything just right. So I want to start off by telling you one critical component of making fabulous popovers. A popover pan. And popover pans have these wells, and generally there are 6. They're connected by wires, and they are not butted up against each other so that the heat can circulate completely around them. And that's important for popovers. I've had this pan for a really long time. I know one of the questions is going to be, well, couldn't you just do it in a regular cupcake tin? And yes, you could, but you would not have the same results. The popovers would be much smaller, and they would not look as beautiful as they do when you use an actual popover pan. The first thing that is required for this recipe is 2 cups of fairly warm water. You want it a little bit warmer than probably room temperature. I practiced a couple of times. I had one utter failure. So I have learned a few things about doing this as a dry mix, and these are the hints I want to pass on to you. We're going to be using our blender to mix it up, and I'm putting the liquid in the blender first. And this liquid also takes into account that I need liquid for rehydrating the eggs, the egg powder, and also for the powdered milk. And so 2 full cups of slightly warm water. Now, because it's just easier, I am going to use the mixture that I've put here in the jar. Now, what this is 1½ cups of flour, 1/2 cup of egg powder, 1/2 cup of powdered milk, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, period. That's it. And so I sort of want to mix the egg and the milk powder together first. Because I have them all together in this jar, I may pick up some flour, and that's okay, but I do want to add the flour last if I can possibly manage to do that. It will be a little bit more difficult using this mix because this one did, as it was vacuum sealing, just kind of mix up. And it would be okay, but the trick is to add the dry ingredients slowly to the water. I'm going to turn the blender on very low, so it's just barely going. And I'm going to reach into this jar, and I'm only going as deep as the eggs, and I'm going to just put a little bit of the milk and the egg powder in at a time, letting it mix thoroughly in between each time. I'm already picking up some flour, and that's okay. Now I'm starting to add the flour. I'm going to turn it up just a notch. and I'm going to spoon in the rest of the flour. Doing it this way prevents lumps from forming in the batter, which is what we want to avoid. All right, it's thickening up, so I need to turn the blender up just a little bit more. And a little more. And now, while this is twirling, I have some melted ghee right here. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of melted ghee. The ghee will not be part of the dry mix. You'll have to have this in your cabinet. So here is 1, 2, and 3. All right, you can see by the blender that I haven't even messed up the upper part of it. So we keep the blender low and add speed a little bit at a time. Now, the next thing we need to do is the batter needs to sit for 15 minutes. And this is an important step because the flour needs to be completely hydrated. The starches need to be wet. And so we want that to just sit there. While that sits, I'm going to preheat the oven to 425. How we treat this pan is also very important for popovers to turn out fabulous. It will sit out here on the counter until we've been sitting here for about 12 minutes. Then I'm going to put it in the oven the last 2 or 3 minutes of the heat up time to get this nice and hot. And then I'm going to bring out my spray oil and spray down in the well and all around. The whole thing needs to be sprayed. Then we quickly pour the batter into almost to the top 6 times and then get them in the oven. Then while the popovers are baking, this is really important too. Don't open the oven. Hopefully you'll have an oven light so that you can look through the door and see what's happening. We don't want the popovers to get too dark too fast. And that was one of the things that happened to one of my test batches yesterday. They got a little bit too dark too fast. The minute you see things starting to get really dark, and it won't happen until after 10, maybe 15 minutes, then we want to turn it down to about 350. What happens, what makes these rise up and poof out, is the steam that is created by heating this batter. There's no leavening agent here. It is just flour, eggs, milk, and a little bit of oil and salt. So the steam will puff that up and puff it out, and we want the inside to get completely done. We don't want any gooey stuff on the inside. So leave it as long as you can at 425. Hopefully about 15 minutes. And then turn it down. Don't leave it longer than 20 minutes. By the 20-minute point, turn it down to 350 so the last 10 minutes can be at 350 where it's baking the inside. Now, my oven runs a little bit hot, and so know your oven, but just watch. Let your eyes tell you that when it starts to maybe get over browned, turn it down. The whole baking time needs to be 30 minutes. So 20 minutes high, 10 minutes low, or 15 and 15, right in there somewhere is a really good balance. So we'll be back when we're ready to pour the dough in here after this pan has been in the oven for about 2 minutes. And back into the oven it goes. We are going to put another one together just like this. I figured most everyone could put it into a jar and be just fine about it. But this may be a more challenging one if you've not ever worked with powders and vacuum sealing before. So I have a cut it yourself length right here, and I'm going to cut it right here. And now I'm going to just seal the bottom. Well, I cut that pretty crooked, but I think it will still seal. Okay, now we have a little bag. And into this bag, we are now going to put our ingredients. Now, one of the things with popovers is that you want to measure the flour in particular very carefully. It takes 1.5 cups of flour, and I will be putting this recipe underneath the video. And then 1/2 cup and level it off as well. And both of those are going to go in the bag. Half a cup of egg powder. Half a cup of powdered milk. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt. All right, so there we have our mixture. And then because these are powders, and I do not want them to be sucked up into my vacuum sealer, I am just going to cover the top right here with this coffee filter. Still porous, it will still suck the air out, but it will prevent anything from being sucked up into the machine. So now I'm going to stick it right in here, and I'm going to do a vacuum and a seal. And there we have our popover. And the only thing I need to add to this is 2 cups of warm water and 3 tablespoons of melted ghee. And that's all there is to it. Let's go check the oven to see how they're doing. We are 20 minutes into the baking time. We're still at 425. So I am going to turn it down. They're looking beautiful. They're not too overly brown. So I am going to turn it down, but I'm going to turn it down to 375 instead of 350. Because I think they still need some good baking time. Okay, we'll be back when they're ready to come out. These have been in for 30 minutes. Let's see how they look. Woo! There we go. Popovers. These are right out of the oven, and so what we want to do is just take a little paring knife and stab each one of them right into the center in order to release the steam. That's going to be very important because we don't want the steam to make everything mushy inside. Okay. So let's take a look. Beautiful, beautiful popovers. The reason I think these are so spectacular is that if we are in a grid down situation, it will be really important for us to have highlights in our day once in a while. And I think popovers are a perfect highlight. These would be so fun to serve with a meal, that, especially on a cooler day, of soup or chili or something accompanied by these popovers. So let's open one up and see how they look. Okay, we'll just go with this guy right here. So they're crusty on the outside, and they should be light and airy on the inside with lots of airspace that steam has made. We'll just get some ghee and put some ghee on here. They're so good, just hot with butter and jam. Only I'm going to skip the jam. Mmm. Mmm. Yum, yum. These are delicious. They're not sweet. They're not full-bodied like a regular roll is. They're something just quite different. Crusty outside, soft, airy inside. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope you try this recipe. These are great. I'm going to put together 15 or 20 of these, not just in our food storage, but also to grab one of these after I get home from work late and we need a little extra treat for a dinner. These will be so handy to have on hand and ready to go. So thanks for being with us, and we will see you at our next video.